is now called to order. We do have a few introductions, but we'll get to those here in just a minute. For everybody sitting around this table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. There's a button on there. I'll make sure it's green. For those of you participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items that fall under the MAG jurisdiction. If you'd like to make a comment at today's meeting, please complete the request to speak form. MAG staff can assist you with that. Also, if you're parked in the parking garage, today's your lucky day. You don't have to validate. It looks like the arm was up. There's no tickets. Everybody's good there. If you purchase a transit ticket, please see staff. They can help you with that. Also, if you need a hearing assisted device, MAG staff can help you with that. We'll go around real quick. We'll start with introductions. You want to introduce yourself real quick? We have a few visitors here, so.
Jason Robertson, City Inspector for City of Mesa.
Thank you. Jeffrey?
Jeffrey Butters with the Ductile Iron Pipe Research Association.
Matthew?
Matt Slazik with US Pipe.
And then Adam Martin with US Pipe.
Rob Castelny with ARPA sitting in for Greg Groenberg.
Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen. All right, we'll move into agenda item number 2. This is call the audience. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under the MAG jurisdiction that are not on the agenda, informational items or items on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes is generally provided for the call of the audience, unless the chair requests an exception to this limit. I've received no request to speak for call of the audience. MAG also provides an opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via the MAG website. Any comments received 2 hours prior to the meeting are shared with the committee members in advance of the meeting for consideration and will be included in the formal meeting minutes. Gordon, have we received anything for call of the audience?
We have not received any public comments via the MAG website.
Thank you. All right, we'll get into agenda item number 3, which is the approval of April 2nd, 2025 meeting minutes. Gordon's going to pull that up. This is the opportunity for any of the committee members to make any corrections if they haven't already mentioned them to Gordon previously. So take a moment to refresh your memory on the meeting minutes. If you do have any comments or changes, please bring them up now. All right, everybody. I'm not hearing any comments or changes to the meeting minutes. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes as written.
Mr. Chairman, I'll motion.
Thank you, Jose. Can I get a second motion, please?
This is Warren. I'll second.
Thank you, Warren. With that, we'll move into a vote.
Okay, let's go down the list, starting with ADOT.
Yes.
Avondale.
Jim Badowich, yes.
Buckeye.
Good afternoon. This is Josh Ford. Yes.
Thank you. Chandler.
This is Warren. Yes.
El Mirage. Florence. Gilbert.
Yes.
Thank you. Glendale.
Yes.
Goodyear.
Yes.
Maricopa County. Mesa.
Yes.
Peoria. Getting feedback from someone. Peoria.
Yes.
Phoenix.
Yes.
Thank you. Scottsdale.
This is Roy Harrington. Yes.
Surprise.
Yes.
Tempe. Tolleson. And Youngtown.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate everybody's attendance. All right, agenda item number 4 is a presentation from US Pipe on joint restraints. This is going to be on a combination, primarily joint restraints. We'll touch on 2 other applications, which will be zinc coated and V-Bio toward the end. Matthew and Adam, if you want to go ahead and whoever's going to present, go ahead and take it from there.
All right, thanks. Yeah, Adam's going to present here. Adam manages the West for all the engineers at US Pipe, our engineering group. US Pipe's been around for 125 years. US Pipe's the restrained joint pipe experts in the industry, and we're here to discuss some joints we're familiar with. Here's Adam.
Thank you, Matt. Next slide. So like Matt mentioned, we'll talk about thrust restraint, what it is, the evolution of the restrained joint pipe, and then we'll close with some corrosion protection, discussing V-Bio and zinc. Next slide. So what are thrust forces? So on pipelines, when you have a change in direction, a change in size, or a dead end, you have thrust forces, which is trying to ultimately rip that pipe apart. So you have to balance those thrust forces or prevent that pipe from pulling apart. Next slide. So in this slide right here, you see a nice straight pipeline. Your forces are balanced. So more likely it's a push-on pipe because, again, the pipe's not trying to get ripped apart. It's balanced. Next slide. The old way of doing this was with thrust blocks. You had bearing, gravity. Next slide. And you can see right here. So in this example, it's a change in direction. So you had to have something there to prevent that pipe from pulling apart. Thing is, with the concrete thrust blocks, it takes time to pour that concrete, let it cure. It takes up a lot of valuable real estate, depending on the size and also the pressure of the line. Those thrust blocks can get very large. And since it's taking up a lot of valuable real estate, if there's ever construction around it in the future and it gets dislodged, you could have a leak and an issue. So there is restrained joint pipe that does not allow you, or excuse me, means that you don't have to use the thrust blocks anymore if you are using those restrained joint pipes. Next slide. So DIPRA, the Ductile Iron Pipe Research Association, has a calculator on their website. So it's the restrained joint calculator. You plug in all your different parameters, size, the diameter, your laying condition, et cetera, and it's going to spit out an answer and let you know what your required restrained joint length is to counter those thrust forces. And you'll notice too, it gives it to you in bare and poly-wrapped length, because poly-wrap, when you do poly-wrap the pipe, does require more restraint distance due to the frictional forces acting on that pipeline. Next slide. So the first type of restrained joint to mention is the Field Dock 350. This is one of our restrained joint gaskets. This replaces the traditional Titan joint gasket and a Titan joint bell. And you'll notice the teeth on those gaskets. So simply put, you insert spigot into the bell and pull back. Those teeth bite down to the pipe, and it's now restrained. And you'll notice it's limited in size. It's only available in 4 through 24 inches, but it is a very effective tool, and it allows you to, again, just turn that regular push-on joint pipe into a restrained joint pipe. Next slide. So US Pipe actually introduced a factory restrained joint ductile iron pipe to the United States in 1979. So we've been dealing with this for a few years, and you'll notice we've had a number of different restrained joints over the years, starting with the TR Flex, which was the one introduced in 1979. And that went up through 36 inches, varying deflection. And then we introduced HP Lock in 2003 for the larger diameter sizes, but you'll notice it was very limited in its deflection capability, only 0.5 degrees. And then we introduced the new restrained joint pipe HDSS back in 2016 from all of our lessons learned on the TR Flex and HP Lock. And that's now from 4 to 54 inches with varying deflection capabilities. Next slide. So with restrained joint pipe, the way these actually function is you have a well bead on the spigot end of the pipe, and then you have some sort of restraining mechanism internal to the bell. And the more contact area that you can have on that well bead, the higher the pressure rating can be, because you're distributing the forces around the circumference of the pipe. And the thing with the TR Flex, you notice there's the red is the contact area where the actual restraining mechanism is. There's a bunch of open slots there. The thing with the TR Flex is in the larger diameter, 30 and 36 in particular, under high pressure situations, since it doesn't have a contact area all over it, way around the circumference of the pipe, it creates these point loads, which is why we actually had to derate it in by 100 PSI and 30 and 36 inches. What I mean by that is a class 350, which is normally rated at 350 PSI, was only rated at 250 PSI. So you had to use that class 350 pipe to get that 250 PSI rating. Sort of a limitation there. And then with the HP lock, you almost have a full 360 degrees of contact area on that well bead, which is why it had a higher pressure rating. But with it being one solid ring, that's why it only had a half a degree deflection, which is why we introduced the HDSS, which almost has a full 360 degrees of contact area on that well bead, but it uses these individual locking segments, which is where you get a higher deflection capability from. Next slide. So again, the TR Flex, it had a left hand and a right hand locking segment. They were red and black. But 4 to 24 inches was rated at 350, 30 and 36. We derated like we just talked about. Next slide. And simply put, spigot into bell, you can see the well bead on the spigot end, then those locking segments get inserted. So as those thrust forces are applied and trying to rip that pipe apart, that locking segments are making contact with that well bead, and that's what's preventing the pipe from pulling apart. And what's good about restrained joint pipe, though, is it can go together very quickly. The small diameter, 20 seconds or less, larger diameter is a couple of minutes. So it's a very quick way as well. Next slide. And then the HP lock, we introduced this back in 2003, 30 to 64 inches. Now we only have it available in 60 and 64 inches. Next slide. The pipe comes with the ring already in the bell, so you would insert the spigot into the bell, tighten down that nut and bolt system, which would tighten down the ring in front of that well bead. And then when your thrust forces were applied, the ring would make contact with the well bead again, preventing the pipe from pulling apart. Then next slide. And then we introduced HDSS back in 2016, 4 to 54 inches. Again, you can see almost a full 360 degrees of contact area on that well bead with those individual locking segments, which are what you see in blue on the screen. And what's good about HDSS as well, though, is its restraint joint, its working pressure rating is true to its size. So a class 350 is rated at 350 PSI. Class 250 is rated at 250 PSI. So this is the industry leading restraint joint with deflection and pressure rating as well. Next slide. And you can see underneath the bell there in that picture, you can actually see those locking segments as well. So it's kind of a check for the contractor. They can see all the locking segments underneath the bell. And what's good about these two is these locking segments are inserted through that 12 o'clock position and then slid to the left and slid to the right. So it's all gravity fed. So if they're not going together for whatever reason or not dropping in place, it's kind of a check on learning, hey, something's not right here, which allows that contractor to go back and fix the problem. Maybe they're over deflected, not homed all the way, whatever it may be. And then by only inserting the locking segments through the 12 o'clock position too, there's safety in mind there. So the contractor's not reaching down underneath the pipe to like the 7 and 5 o'clock position. They're only inserting those locking segments through the 12 o'clock position. And what's good about it too is you can see all the deflection capabilities, and you can see why we have that. 30 inches is a really good example. 2.5 degrees deflection while rated at 350 PSI, as compared to that HP lock, which was only a half a degree of deflection while rated at 350, as compared to the TR Flex, which is 1 3/4 degrees deflection, but only rated at 250 PSI. And deflection is obviously a very valuable tool, ground settlement as an example, but also you can potentially replace some fittings on a longer pipeline by using the curvature because of the deflection. And then that bucket that you see right there, that's what the locking segments come in. So it's 1 bucket per joint. So we try to make it as simple as possible for the contractor. Next slide. And that's what the locking segments look like. You can't put them in backwards either. So that's a really good thing because they're angled. So you can only put them in one way. Otherwise, they're not going to drop into place. Next slide. And then you can kind of see it in the upper left-hand corner photo, but there's little notches on the back side of the locking segments. And that also allows the contractor to disassemble this for whatever reason. Maybe they install an extra joint, didn't need it to be there. They can disassemble this as well. And then in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see a little bit of snow there, but that was actually the first installation of HDSS back in 2016. And that was actually a directional drill. So you can also use restrained joint pipe for directional drilling. Next slide. And then we had to go through a whole testing process. We can't just claim that we meet AWWA. We have to go through a third-party test, regular testing, and then third-party testing. So this was actually a 48-inch HDSS Class 350 test that we did back in 2020. And it actually tested to 969 PSI to failure, which meets and exceeds the standard. And that equates to about 1.8 million pounds of thrust force. And there is a video there if you want to play that. So that in context to you, about 1.8 million pounds of thrust force, we're talking that's like the amount of thrust force that takes rockets into space. So that's a substantial amount of force right there. Next slide. And then lastly, just corrosion control. There's numerous methods to protect ductile iron pipe in regards to corrosion. The first and one of the most popular, next slide, is with polyethylene encasement, also known as polywrap. It's economical, it's effective. Essentially what it's doing is it's minimizing the flux of water making contact with the pipe surface. And what water does, water brings oxygen. So oxygen is a component that could cause corrosion. So if you eliminate that, you help eliminate the corrosion potential. Next slide. There is an improved version. It's through DIPRA. All the member companies utilize VBio. So us, McQueen and American all utilize this, but it's an improved, enhanced polyethylene encasement. So it still protects against normal galvanic corrosion, but it also has a biocide in it that helps protect against any sort of microbiologically influenced corrosion. But then it also has a corrosion inhibitor on the inside surface. So when you polywrap pipe, you're trapping in oxygen. An initial corrosion rate could occur, but the corrosion inhibitor prevents that from occurring. Next slide. And that's what you see right there, the corrosion inhibitor. The polar molecules in that actually are attracted to the pipe surface, so it prevents that initial corrosion rate from occurring. Next slide. And this was from a DIPRA case study, and you can see it took a couple years for that corrosion potential to deplete, and that's as that oxygen level is depleting, so is the corrosion potential. But with that VBio from day one, with that corrosion inhibitor on there, it's protecting the pipe. Next slide. And then that's just a case study showing you how effective VBio is. And this was down in the Everglades, which is one of the most corrosive environments in the United States. So you can see how effective the VBio tool is. Next slide. And it's white like that. You'll wonder, why is it white like that? White polywrap on black pipe helps identify cuts or tears. So during the construction process, if anything get torn, you could actually see it and then replace it. Whereas if it's black polywrap on black pipe, it's a little harder to identify that. And then next slide. And then metallic zinc. So what zinc is, it's essentially acting as a massive anode. So it's a sacrificial cathodic protection system. Next slide. It's applied through a thermal sprayer. It's 99.9% pure zinc. And it's applied per ISO 8179 at 200 grams per square meter. So it's applied in weight, not necessarily in mil thickness, but it's roughly about 1 to 2 mils thick. Next slide. And this is just showing you the self-healing properties. So if there ever was a scratch, essentially it's oxidizing. It's essentially forming a crust over that area. So that zinc is going to deplete over time. And we do recommend, when using zinc-coated ductile iron pipe, you use it in conjunction with the polywrap, so that way they function together. Next slide. And you might wonder, when do I need zinc? When should I use polywrap? So DIPRA, along with CorePro years ago, did put together this design decision model, DDM. And there's a likelihood and consequence. So based on the soil studies, based on the pH, the chlorides, the redox, all that in the soil, and then also the consequence, what's the size, is an alternate pipeline. It's a point-based system to actually help you determine when do you actually need this corrosion protection methods for your pipeline. So that way you're not just arbitrarily saying we need to always use zinc, but it's giving you an actual scientific reasoning when you do need it. Next slide. And that's just the chart. You'll plot your points, and then it will tell you 1 through 5, 5 being the worst, 1 being a really good environment, but it will tell you when you actually need to use what. Next slide. And that's what it's telling you right there. So 1 would be as manufactured with shop coat, and then 5 is really bad environment where we're recommending the zinc and the VBio used together. Next slide. Any questions?
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Matthew. I encourage any of the committee members, if you want to bring these guys in, or even DIPRA in to give a presentation to your group, reach out to them. They provided many presentations to Glendale inspectors. I mean, all kinds of Glendale staff, everything from wrap and tap to like the joint restraint that Adam just presented right now. So with that, I'll open it up to questions to the team. Does anybody have any questions regarding the presentation? A quiet group today.
Yeah, Gene, this is Jim Battlewitch from Avondale. So I know, and this is not necessarily for this product, but anytime you've got some restrained joints or restrained pipe, they say, well, we don't need thrust blocks, but that's really only for brand new construction. If you're doing the tie-ons to existing, you don't know what you've got, you know, you're still going to want to do a thrust block just to counteract anything that may be enacted on the existing pipe down the road. So,
Yeah, thank you, Jim. With that, there's absolutely, if you don't know what you're tying onto, and the configuration behind that, you're absolutely right. You may still need to use a thrust block in conjunction with until you get beyond that point. Does that sound fair, Adam?
Yes, or you could use bell harness restraint as well, which goes over an existing push-on pipe. So that's another method that you could.
But if you're tying on to say ACP or something with a
Yes.
dresser coupling, you might have a little,
Correct.
you might have to have a thrust block on that first connection.
well, we really don't. Just to remind everybody, we took that bell harnesses out of MAG, so I don't think any agency uses the external bell restraints. We don't use it, and so I don't think that's an option. So all you got is this option or the thrust blocks. Am I correct on that, Gene?
I believe you are, Jim. I believe you are.
Okay. And then is there a link to, this was a very good presentation, and I'm going to try to invite to Public Works Combo Engineering meeting in Avondale. I'd like to get a link to that. Gordon, is it going to be in the minutes somewhere?
Yeah, I will post the presentation on the meeting page afterwards.
Yeah, and I like that. What is that, HDS, or that last one with the blue inserts, the blue gaskets? Though that's the important thing for me, and I'm glad you mentioned it, Adam, is that the inspector needs to see this stuff, because sometimes we don't have the ability to have a full-time inspector on these jobs, and so just to do spot checks and to see if it's installed is important. So I kind of like that product from an inspection standpoint.
I would agree. That was one of the challenges back in my early days with inspection was I'll use the name field lock, for instance. They were black, and I always wondered how I can't tell if it's a restrained joint. So if I'm not there when it gets pushed together, I'm not considering it a restrained joint. But being a color difference on some of these other ones, I know there's some other manufacturers, a yellow one out there. It makes it easier. You can look in between and see the gasket, the different color, and you know it's in. But that's a good point. Thank you. And like I said, I encourage you guys, reach out to this vendor or reach out to US Pipe. They'd be more than happy. I'll volunteer them for you. For them, they'll be more than happy to come meet with your Public Works group and give a presentation for Glendale. I'm sure they've done it for many other cities. So
Yeah, HDSS, that's it. So
the other thing is DIPRA, Jeffrey Butters, he's also available to come out for, if you guys need something, corrosion protection and you don't want to bring a specific manufacturer on board. The DIPRA, the Ductile Iron Pipe Research Association, kind of oversees that. You're more than welcome to invite him too.
is there a quick link to that restrained joint calculator, Gene, on there?
There is on DIPRA's website. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, if you go to dipper.org and you can look up technical references, and there'll be a link for the calculators. And we have a list of calculators there you can use.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've seen it before. And Gordon, could you put up that contact sheet, that last slide, one more time, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Any other committee members have any questions or comments regarding the presentation? All right. Hearing none, we'll move into items proposed to be heard. Cases under consideration. This is a carry forward case from 2024. It's case 24-13, proposed revisions to section 620, cast in place concrete pipe with the acronym CIPCP. This one's sponsored by Warren White of Chandler and the Water Services Working Group. Warren, do you have an update you'd like to provide?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are approximately where we were at our last meeting. We haven't had a chance to regroup with Blue Corps and Brian to talk about the broader case, which would be looking at the ADOT and the American Concrete Institute spec. So that still needs to be done, but I feel like from what I've heard, we were open to the potential of maybe pushing this to an action item to vote on approving the premise of the case that we started with, this one does clean up the nomenclature for cast in place concrete pipe and does take out some of the archaic language for what to do with the expansive soil conditions that is not with that strikeout right there. So as we know, we then got into getting input from the Bluecor's, the geotech team, and we added this new paragraph. So I still feel like the broader case, if we were to produce another case that would look at the ADOT and ACI specs, I think there's more work to be done there based on Brian's input. But I'm I'm open to get this off the list for now, to propose moving this to an action item and then continue the effort to look at a broader case to do an overhaul on this.
So Warren, refresh my memory, but I recall this being, it was up for action at one point, potential action, and then we had some feedback and it looked like it was going to grow into something larger. We pulled it off the agenda for action. But what I'm hearing is that we're not going to be growing it into that bigger item. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, Gene, there is still room for that. And as we know, so that if we were to have some time to regroup with Bluecor and Brian, we could still kick this for another month just to see if we could pull this together to do the broader case. But we're still left with those two options. If we wanted to put it on action for next month with option one as is, and if we are able to gather steam to draft the overall case, then we could go in that direction too. So that's pretty much where we're at.
Okay, well,
Getting some time to roll our sleeves up and get everyone together is the key item there.
yeah, I think at this point, we need to encourage all the committee members to go through this and see where they stand on it. We'll put it up for possible action for the next meeting. Is that what I'm hearing, Warren? Your preference?
Yes. And
Okay.
in the meantime, I will make sure that we get out there on the case page, the ADOT spec and the ACI spec, so we can all see that together.
All right. For this case, I reached out to Bluecor and I brought them in. They did a lunch and learn for Glendale staff, and we went over it. And then we had many of our inspectors, or a couple of our inspectors, run out to the field to where they were on the west side somewhere. I don't know if it was Avondale or Goodyear, but very close to Glendale. And they actually watched it being cast in place right there out in the field. They were excited that Bluecor invited them out there. So there's another resource if you guys, any of the committee members want to do a kind of a learning, there's a learning opportunity there with Bluecor is what I'm trying to say. I'm open this one up for discussion to the committee members. Any committee members have any comments or questions about this case? All right, we'll put it up for possible action for the next meeting. All right, we'll move into agenda item number 6, new cases for 2025. This is miscellaneous corrections. We do have one miscellaneous correction that's going to, that one that was added for section 752, which was deleted out of MAG. I'm not sure when it was deleted, but it doesn't exist. So we need to get that scratched out. It'll be 610.10 B as in boy for joints, and it'll just reference section 750. All right, any questions from the committee members on miscellaneous corrections or any of them on there?
Just one comment, Mr. Chairman. So it's, I haven't read it in a while. 610 is just the word general water line spec, right?
Yeah.
Is the 752 section the old ACP pipe?
That I don't know. 752, does anybody?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So in this joint section, should we also make reference to the PVC water line spec then? Because that might have different joints, not just that. 750 is ductile pipe. So if we replace 752, maybe we need to insert the PVC spec as well.
Yeah, let me look at that. That's a good point. Thank you.
I don't know if we have a PVC pipe, material pipe section in 700 though.
That's,
Into
yeah, this Jim Badowich Avondale, that's one thing, yeah, I discussed, I think at the last meeting, we need to add that. I think we need to, we've got all these other materials in there and somehow PVC got left out, so.
Wait, Jim, am I hearing that there is a section and we need to add it to the 610 reference, or we need to create a section for PVC?
I think we need to create a 700 section for PVC.
All right, Water Sewer Working Group, you got your hands full.
I know.
I didn't realize there wasn't one. Phoenix doesn't use PVC, but
Yeah, neither does Glendale, so I couldn't comment on that. All right, any other questions or comments regarding miscellaneous corrections? All right, we'll move into agenda item number 7. This is case 25-02, precast reinforced concrete box culvert. I know at the last meeting, we had good productive discussion, the last couple meetings. There were a couple corrections that were going to be made. Warren White from Chandler, you want to go ahead and give us an update?
Thanks again, Mr. Chair. I don't believe Adriana was able to make it today, but we received comments from City of Phoenix. Thanks, Jose. And through that process, updates were done to the spec. There's the comments from City of Phoenix. One remaining discussion item, and I feel like we have good direction, is obviously this is meant to be a material spec, and whether to keep this as a fabrication spec or a material spec or or integrate installation into this. And the thought is to probably keep it as material, and then move some of the installation aspects to 601, and that's still on the list to do. We did want to work through the working group a little more this month to talk through some of those things.
So Warren, I know Ryan had a lot of Ryan Nichols had a lot of questions or comments at the last meeting. Can't recall all of them, but did we address some of those or at least take them into consideration?
I will have to go back and look through those to see if we've touched on all of Ryan's comments, but if not, that we'll bullet those out and add that to the discussion. Still need to get a meeting set up with Adriana to go through this when I have some more time as well.
Yeah, I looked through the meeting minutes. I did see him in there, unless Ryan wants to touch on them again. No, okay. There was a removal by others. We're supposed to remove that language out of the detail. Is that the same? That's the same detail, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Changes have been made to the detail at this point.
All right. Anything else on this case, Warren?
Not at this point. Yeah, Ryan, we'll make sure we revisit your comments and get this ready, updated for the next meeting.
All right. Open it up to the committee for discussion. Any other questions or comments from committee members? All right, agenda item number 8 is case 25-03. This is section 751, cross-link polyethylene pipe for water service lines, also known as PEX A. This is where this one also has brought Warren White from Chandler. Warren's been a busy man. I know we were talking about identifying at the last meeting, identifying the municipal PEX A with certain markers. And then obviously there's a lot of discussion about pipe colors and including markings. But Warren, you want to go ahead and give us an update?
Thanks again, Gene. At this point, we incorporated some of the feedback that we received in the committee meeting and then also in the working group, plus identifying through Jeremy's identified another change there in that first red section where in addition to the brass and bronze service for the AWA requirements. And then the one aspect that came out in the working group, I believe it was Jim's comment, although not exactly fitting here on the material spec, but the thought was from the working group, it would be helpful to ensure that the tracer wire is at least included here. It is part of the new section 632 for all service lines. But we've drafted it in here just to, at this point, for feedback.
Very good. Yeah, that's crucial component being non-metallic. We need to be able to trace that.
And then onward from there, there was some comments in the last group. So we just cleaned this up a little bit to be more clear that the bulleted standard design factors are coming from that ASTM D2387. And then just kind of changing the language there to better match the ASTM. Just some general cleanup at this point. Looking for more feedback.
Thank you, Warren. I know I mentioned it a dozen times, but Glendale gave it a shot. We use it on the back side of the backflow preventer, and worked out really well. We put it in a sleeve and gave it a shot. All right, I'm going to open it up to the committee members for discussion. Any questions, comments on this case? Warren, any idea? What are you thinking for putting it up for action?
Put it out to Jim, and Jim, do you think what, another meeting, working group, finalize and then call it maybe for July, maybe?
Mr. Badowich? I think that's fair, Warren.
Okay.
There's no rush. It's not a large, it's not a large section. It's relatively small. Our committee members can get through it in a matter of minutes. So I encourage all committee members to review it and give input back to Warren or the working group committee. And we'll discuss it at the next working group meeting and then put it up for action. Maybe we'll discuss the details of it at the next standard specification and detail committee meeting. All right, any other questions regarding the PECs? All right, moving into agenda item number 9, this is case 2025-04, updating Arizona test methods using the AASHTO equivalent version. Greg is obviously not here in the flesh. We feel him, we feel his presence. Rob is going to speak on Greg's behalf. If you want to give us an update, please.
So we've gone through the working group and kind of identified every area within MAG that they reference the Arizona standard test methods. ADOT has decided to eliminate or change up their ATTI program to move towards all AASHTO procedures, which is great for MAG because you guys are pretty much all AASHTO procedures, but there is some sampling and different test methods that are referenced that we're gearing towards the ATTI certification. That way, when technicians get certified, they're actually being certified for what they're doing within MAG instead of MAG having old ADOT methods. So it's just updating this. Their field certification changed in March to AASHTO. Their laboratory is changing in July, and their asphalt is being updated in September. So we'd like to get this approved this year. That way, starting in 2026, it's in line with ADOT and the ATTI methods.
I think ARPA did a representative of ARPA, Arizona Rock Products Association. You guys did a great job getting in front of this.
Yeah, we knew it was coming, and so a few of us are on the ATTI board. So we wanted to make sure that we're not waiting till 2027 to update MAG to get in line. So it'll all kind of everything shifting over this year. And then next year, if we can get it in MAG, we'd be prepared and ready for it.
I appreciate that. So this, obviously this case is to stay consistent, but across the board. Is that all you got for updates? That was pretty good. Thank you. Any questions from the committee members or discussion on this agenda item? All right. We'll move into case 25-05, agenda item number 10. This is updating references, Maricopa County guardrails. Marty, I don't believe Marty's on, is he?
I'm here. This is Marty.
Nice.
Give me-
You want to give an update on this,
I
please?
apologize. I was late. I was just keying away and totally forgot, but I came on about 2 o'clock, so I'm here.
All right. You have an update you want to provide, Marty?
I do not have any updates. I did take a look at ADOT. Did go over to take a look. That was suggested take a look at that, and we over here don't have any comments regarding what ADOT has, and I know we just wanted to make minor changes with respect to the 2800 series, just to remove those details because we are remove them from our standards in 2026. And we'll be using them only for maintenance purposes. So if there's any questions on?
When would you like to see this case go, Marty?
This year, anytime you feel comfortable with moving it forward. So we'd like to see it implemented for 2026. But anytime if there's no questions, comments, that move forward anytime you would like.
All right. Well, I'd suggest everybody get it to their transportation division and see if there's any comments from their end that maybe we didn't address.
Yeah, definitely contact me, or at the meeting here, or you can contact me over here if you have any questions about. I don't know if any jurisdictions are still using those details. So if there's any jurisdiction that still using those details, that's references from ours, definitely reach out to me so I can have a discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. All right, any other committee members have questions or comments on this case?
Marty, this is Brian Gallimore. Is any of the detail changing or just the specification itself?
No, the details are being removed. So so from the standard, the McDonald standard details that we have for the 2800 series, all those details are being physically removed from our supplement. And we're going to go with the 3100 series for MASH. So so we just wanted this to reference that, and we will make modifications to our specification for guardrail in our supplement as well. So.
Okay, thank you, Marty.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian. Marty, thank you for the case and the update. Any other comments from committee members on the case? All right, hearing none, we'll move into agenda item number 11, case 25-06, revised detail 260. This is a retrofit alley or driveway entrance. Jose Rodriguez from City of Phoenix, you want to provide an update?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we discussed this a little bit more at the ADA working group. There's a couple of comments that came out from that discussion. There's a suggestion from the city of Tempe. I know Gordon trying to work on putting it up there, yeah. But changing a little bit of the language on the call out for the sidewalk width. They just want to make sure that they emphasize that the sidewalk width needs to be agreed upon by the agency, not necessarily as shown on the plans. Because they have some non-standard sections or cross sections where they have really wide sidewalks. So there it is. So that's that box on the top of the red notes.
Couldn't you just leave it as minimum 8 or minimum 5?
No, they want to kind of make sure that they specify that the overall width needs to be approved by the agency.
Okay.
Because they get some plans that fall through the cracks and call out a sidewalk width that doesn't meet their standards.
It's a review.
We'll deal with it.
Plan
right?
review. Yeah.
And outside of that, there was a general comment to make sure that when we rework this detail, that some of the dimensions or the drawing is somewhat to scale. So we'll take a look at that when we revise it. So I haven't heard any other comments on it. I'll bring in a clean copy on the next meeting, and then probably looking forward to potential vote in July.
How's the working group doing? You getting good feedback from the members?
Yep, there's a lot of work to be done. So we're getting a lot of attendance. That's for sure.
Well, attendance is one thing, but is it like a typical project where 2 guys do all the work and everybody gets the same grade?
I think we're cracking the shell of some of the
Okay.
participants. So
Was it,
yes.
can you remind me, the change from 8% slope to 5% slope was because these are not interpreted to be curb ramps, and so it doesn't meet the standard? Is that why the change?
Correct, yes. Because we checked with the access board, and technically because the pedestrian is still walking through what is considered the sidewalk, they need to maintain that.
As
maximum
opposed to
size.
leaving the curb.
Correct.
So it's not a curb ramp.
It's not a curb.
Okay. thank you.
Therefore, it would not require truncated domes because you're not leaving the sidewalk?
Yes, but just to clarify, there are other conditions where you would need under PROAC truncated dome, and that is really comes down to whether or not that driveway has a yield sign or a stop sign
Hmm,
or a traffic sign.
okay.
But that gets a little bit more complicated to put into a detail.
Well, and that's what I was wondering is there going to be any reference of truncated domes in the detail, or if that's for a whole design side?
That might be a potentially a separate detail, but the guidance is in PROAC, and it really comes down to whether or not that is a stop control.
Then I would rather the engineer of record make that determination rather than the detail.
Yes, because that needs to be a cohesive plan set, because typically
Yes.
traffic engineers are not the ones drawing the sidewalk and driveway, so like that becomes a little bit of a challenge.
Right. Yeah, thanks for that refresh too. And that question, Ryan, that was one of my early questions is why are we shallow in that? Can't we run a 1 and 12? But that was, thank you. So
Yeah,
thanks
but
for bringing that up again.
The access board, they clarify that because this is the intent of this detail is also for a retrofit. If you have conditions out there where you cannot meet that 5%, you can go steeper. So that's why we have a range.
And that goes on that note 10 too, Jose, right?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Jose, for that update. Do you have any other items you need to update? I'll open it up to the committee members for additional discussion. Any questions or comments on the case? All right, I encourage everybody to look at the markups. Jose, are you going to start putting this more into a clean version then? That's what I heard.
Yeah, I think Warren and I had discussed in the working group that we were going to look for a volunteer from our consultant partners to help us out with some of the drafting effort. If not, I'll get somebody in the city. But I think I did find somebody. I just need to reach out to them.
Right. Thank you. All right, agenda item number 12, which would be case 25-07. This is revised section 340.3.9 tolerances to meet the PROAG standard. Another ADA. Warren from Chandler sponsoring this. Warren, you want to provide, this is a new case, so you want to provide some context to it?
Sure, thanks, Dean. Yeah, this would be our second case coming out of the working group, more or less the low-hanging fruit item, just to modify the tolerance section in section 340 to better match the slight changes that came in PROAG for mainly the slope allowance, which is now from the 2% to 2.1. And then revisiting that paragraph slightly just to clarify. And then there are some times where that may not fit everything. So that first sentence we've added, that except as expressly allowed for certain conditions. This statement, the grades shall not exceed the maximum grades indicated. And then removing the older term ADA guidelines for specifically where this is coming from, which is the PROAG. So this is where we're at in terms of the working group's discussion and this paragraph. So open to any feedback on that.
Yeah, I'll open it up for discussion. Ryan?
Yeah, Warren, I'm noting that the tolerances, the percentages are sometimes listed as a whole number, no decimal, and sometimes with a single decimal. And I guess the question becomes, what's the tolerance to the tolerance, right?
Right.
So and I'm going off memory here, but a 1 in 48 slope is 2.08 something percent, and it looks like it's been rounded up to 2.1.
That is correct. That's kind of what, if you look at how PROAG has incorporated that rounding, and they're setting it at 2.1.
So I guess the question is, if it's 2.14, does that round down to 2.1 and you're in compliance? Or how does that
That's a
factor
good
in?
question.
And do we, if we're gonna put tolerances to, say, the 10th decimal place, do we want all of the slopes to be called out to a 10th, or do we want to have it some are whole numbers and some have decimals?
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Obviously,
To Ryan's point, Warren, yeah, if we're gonna call it out to the 10th, then on one, then let's just do it on all of them for uniformity. So if it's 2%, it'll be 2.0%. But then also the double, you don't want to get into a double rounding situation either. But yeah, we need to sort through that 1 point or 1 to 48, whether that's that 2.08 or 2.1. To me, it would make sense. It would be a 2.1, but you can err on precaution and drop it the other way. So that's probably something that needs to get discussed with the working group, wouldn't you say?
sure, we can talk about that more. As mentioned, though, that 2.1 is exactly how it's written in PROAG. So,
okay.
And that's fine, and we can leave it that way, but I guess I can already envision the arguments we're gonna have with somebody trying to say that a 2.12% is within tolerance because it rounds to 2.1, and somebody else arguing that it's not in tolerance. And if our specification doesn't explain the rounding, or whether rounding is applicable or not applicable, then that argument is going to occur somewhere along the lines.
Yeah, fair enough.
So maybe just explaining the rounding somewhere in the specification may be beneficial.
we can talk about that. Anyone have any thoughts on that? How to incorporate the rounding topic without?
We can look to see if PROA gave any guidance in the ways of measuring this kind of stuff. I don't believe I read it, but I haven't read it the way through. And we can look at that one and see if there's something we can draw from there.
Yeah, this is Josh Ford, City of Buckeye. You know, in my mind, the tolerance is tolerance against the plans and details, right? Which start off at 1.5% for MAC details. So if you're up in a situation where you're at 2.1, you're already probably far beyond the tolerance against the standard detail, or against, you know, what generally gets expected plans. You're already far out of the tolerance that's shown here from that, you know, 1.5% starting point. So I think these numbers here are absolute maximums, meaning, you know, if you go over, then it exceeds, and you don't get to go over and round down. These are maxes, but I think we've already built in a lot of buffer by starting with, 1.5% cross slope, for instance.
I agree, Josh, and that was like the sidewalk detail itself. You're supposed to build to 1.5, so therefore, if you're already at 2.1, you're far past that, so.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Josh. Jose, thank you for your feedback. Ryan, thank you for your feedback. Any other committee members have comments on this case?
Mr. Chairman, I would just suggest between the two of them, there's some wording you may want to make parallel. So in the prior case where we're talking about words like where it's technically infeasible and with agency approval, and this one has certain conditions and then no approval. So look at trying to maybe make sure, because I'm reading this one in particular, allowed for certain conditions, allowed by whom? Who's going to make that decision? So I the agency approval and the other one's really nice. You may want to use some parallel language between these. Certain conditions is pretty vague.
Yes, I think the intent was under certain conditions expressed in PROAC.
Okay.
But we can wordsmith.
Yeah, just, you've got two of them that have two. You pick one.
Yeah, for consistency.
Yeah, if I'm the contractor out there, I'm saying, well, certain conditions, say certain conditions are here. Make sure you've got a way to arbitrate it.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Peter. Any other feedback from committee members? All right, we'll move into agenda item number 13. This is case 25-08. This is a new section 746 for the fiberglass reinforced polymer mortar pipe. This one is brought by Arvid. Arvid's not here today. I can give a quick 30,000 foot summary of it. If anybody else has been intimately involved, feel free to jump in with this case. But basically, it's for gravity feed sewer, sewer force main, storm drain irrigation, water transmission, and other conveyance systems with an operating pressure up to 350. So it's good for 12-inch through 126-inch pipe, direct bury, slip lining, casing carrier, tunnel carrier, direct jacking, micro tunneling, and above ground. So I encourage all the committee members to look at this new section. It is just put out. Any other committee members been involved in this with Arvid?
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, this is Rene Garcia. I've been intimately involved with it. I wrote it.
Rene, who are you with? You want a quick introduction on yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. I'm with Hobos Pipe, Senior Director of Engineering. Been there for 25 years. So we were asked to write a material spec for fiberglass pipe that was generic for this type of pipe and its use. So this is what I came up with. And Arvid's not here today, so I'm sitting in if there's any questions or comments related to this particular material spec. I can help.
This one's in the sewer water working group, I assume. I know it was coming. I know there was grumblings of it. I didn't make the last meeting, but was it discussed at the last working group meeting?
Mr. Chairman, Jim Badowich, I'm with the working water and sewer. Arvid wasn't there, so we didn't have much discussion on it. It's been discussed though in detail previous meetings and then before it became a case here. So the only thing I got a concern with is it's mentioned in the general discussion there. If Gordon, you can go back to that. It's used for water, pressurized water. I've never heard of it being used for water systems. So other than sewer and storm drain.
Yeah, up to 350 PSI.
So I'm curious about that. I've never seen it used for high pressure water transmission lines. Has that been used in Arizona for that purpose at all? Is there any examples for that?
Renee?
Oh, I'd have to go back. I'd have to look through the records to be honest. But yes, it has been used in other states. We have it in every state in the country for including water, potable water applications as well. But I'd have to look and see in Arizona specifically if what projects have been done for water. Irrigation, it's being used, it's being put in right now, literally. So.
Yeah, I'd be concerned with that because when you do pressure water systems, you got to deal with fittings and valves, and I just don't know how that works with this type of pipe. So that's my only concern is I realize it's just a general, and it'd have to be specific to a design on the specific plans and specs. But I was just curious about that.
Jim, maybe a good resolution of that is to have either Hobos or one of the other manufacturers, since Renee wrote this spec, maybe put together a presentation for the working group.
Yeah, I'd like that, Renee. We'll talk about it later in the meeting today, but I'd like to maybe get another kind of get reacquainted, I guess, with some of the uses of it.
Yeah, absolutely, I'd be happy to do that. Yep.
I mean, it's been around for a while, but like I said, I've never heard of it being used for pressure water lines. So.
Right. Thank you, Jim. Any other committee members? Renee, did you give all the information you wanted to give on this case?
Yes. I know the most recent update was regarding the testing section that I added. I think it came up in one of the previous meetings, so I added that to the end of this spec.
746.4.2 field tests,
Yep.
pressure application. Oh, the whole testing section. I see. 0.4. Yeah. Field test gravity sewer. Okay. Thank you. Any committee members have any questions or comments on this case? It's a brand new case, so I'd encourage everybody to review it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
This is primarily meant to be a material specification, and it does reference casing carrier and tunnel carrier. Therefore, it does have applications in the electric power industry. It's been used in Phoenix, in the Phoenix metropolitan area, as carrier pipe for high voltage underground electric. So I'm going to do some checking on that. The concern I have is that we've added a testing section and a field testing section for a material specification.
Okay.
Without an installation reference to that. So to me, those would be, if you are installing it for the purpose of carrying a fluid, those would be applicable. If it's being used as a carrier pipe, dry utilities, that would not be applicable. So got to be a little careful when we put a partial installation piece in a material specification that could have wider applications.
Yeah,
That
Peter,
they show on the front side.
I think that's a good point.
So maybe move that part to 711 or 611.
Yeah, I'm thinking that would belong in an installation specification. I can see this being limited if it's being used for a non-fluid carrying purpose. If it's got a testing section and somebody misinterpreting that.
Catch that feedback, Renee?
I sure did. Yep, and I appreciate that. Yes.
Yeah, I second the comments that Peter making on this. This needs to be moved to 611, and then I still think it seems to be missing a lot here. I mean, if you're going to use it for water, then there's a whole area on chlorination and disinfection that would apply. So there's a lot more testing that is involved depending upon the use of the pipe. Sewer has its own. So I don't know how this testing, it's going to cause conflicts basically, because we've already got specs in the 611 that tests for water and sewer. And then if Peter says it's used for electrical conduit, that's a whole nother application there. So this testing is going to have to be moved and it needs a lot more clarification in my opinion.
Hey, Jim,
Yes.
the testing section in 611 that you're saying this may be in conflict with, is it applicable to any and every type of water pipe, or is there individual requirements for different pipe types in that?
Excuse me. No, it's the same for ductile iron or PVC. So if this is gonna be a whole nother, to me, it should be, the water and sewer, it should be the same kind of testing. It should not be any changes.
So I guess that's my question or comment, adding on to the previous comments is, if we're going to introduce a pipe for those applications, shouldn't it meet the same specifications that the other pipes are meeting? I mean, they have those specifications for a reason. Are we going to introduce a more stringent or less stringent specification for a different pipe just because it's a different pipe? So I guess that would be the question is, does it meet those specifications already? And are we interested in introducing various specifications for different pipe materials? And I'll leave my question/comment at that for now.
Yeah, it's good open-ended. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion based on that.
I would agree on that and any kind of installation. If we just want to leave it a material specification, so be it. Then I think there's going to be an effort to have to go through different installation potential uses. Again, as a carrier pipe, we already have some for tunneling purposes. Do we have to modify that to accommodate this pipe? Does this pipe have to be referenced in those ones, this section? So there may be some other fallout from different sections we're going to have to look at.
Yeah, I echo that. So Renee, you need to kind of look at the 611 and see if your pipe meets the sewer and water testing requirements. If not, then might have to, look into a different spec. I hate to do that, just different testing for different materials. I like to kind of stay away from that. If you can't meet those tests, maybe it won't be applicable for that, or I don't know. We can discuss it later on if we need special testing just for this type of pipe. But we're going to need to look at that.
Jim, I would agree with you. I don't think the committee's into making those special arrangements for different materials. We're going to have one testing specification to capture all those materials. So
it should. That's not fair to the other materials. So that's what I would say. So Renee, we got our working group. We need to do your little homework on that, and we can discuss it at the working group. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll take a look at it and participate in that. Looking at 611 and we could probably just reference that as the applicable testing section.
Yeah, if your material meets the testing requirements, and that's great. That'll work fine. But we kind of want to stay away from having special, exceptions for your pipe material as regarding testing. So you either meet it or you don't. If you don't, then because I've heard of it. Arvin's mainly been pushing this for a casing pipe for railways and stuff like that. And I know it's been used in some large diameter sewers, but that's about it as far as I know in Arizona anyway. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And there's a pressurized sewer job that I know of for sure in Phoenix that was installed in 2000. That was it's still in service. So it's a pressure application with fittings and whatnot.
But yeah, check the AWWA, see if it's even allowed in their spec. But again, we can get in more detail later in the working group. So.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for jumping in and helping me out with that. I appreciate it.
Thank
you.
you.
All right. Other comments or questions from committee members on this case? All right, we'll go to agenda item number 14. This is a new case, 25-09. We talked about revising details 303-1 and 303-2 for pipe joint restraints. This one I've been working with two separate efforts here. Been working with US Pipe. They've really been spearheading, helping me verify a lot of these calculations and just drafting these modifications. And then with a separate effort, I've been working with DIPRA, just pushing it through to them put another set of eyes on it. So with this case in particular, the LRN was the very confusing portion. We removed the reference to LRN altogether. If you go to the second page, you'll notice the T's and the dead ends are going to be matching distances. That's because with removing the LRN from the equation, now they're treated as a dead end. So this chart, we also deleted some of the odd sizes out of here. We made some note in the notes section for that. We said you'd go up to the next largest size. Now, this whole detail, these lengths can be shortened with by engineered calculations. So this is, I don't want to say this is for specifically for field use, although it is used for field. It could be used for design, but I would hope a designer would double check measurements and save the municipality some money by shortening these lengths. But you'll see that we added a whole nother list of assumptions in here under notes. There is one thing I need to do as another third separate effort is I need to look at the restrained lengths for the PVC, because I know PVC was added to this chart at some point. I'm not sure when it was, but I think Warren was kind of involved in some of that, or at least I've had discussions with Warren on it from Chandler. But I need to contact and collaborate with one of the PVC manufacturers to verify these lengths, because my rough estimates were very close to the length of restrained ductile by within, I would say, maybe a couple percent. But I just want to make sure that we're not under conservative. We're not conservative enough. But Matthew, do you have any feedback or Adam on this case, on this particular case specific to this case? I know Matthew has a mouthful, but
No, not specifically to the case. I mean,
Okay.
We discussed in the working group as well about, we're familiar with ductile iron pipe restraints. But
Yes.
For the other materials, we'll have to reach out to.
Yeah, being the subject matter expert in that area, I'm going to leave you to that area. And then after, like I said, after it's done, or as we go, as a separate effort, I'll push it through DIPR. I just want to make sure that the Ductile Iron Pipe Research Association is aware and gives feedback.
Gene, this is Warren. I will go back through my notes. I know it's been a few years back, but I'll see if I have some notes on who we worked with during that case for the PVC pipe.
Yeah, if you can get me a contact, that would be helpful. Either that, or I'm gonna. Glendale doesn't use PVC, so that's going to be a tough one for me. I'll have to drum up some contacts from somewhere, so I can use some assistance for sure, Warren.
No problem. Give me a little bit of time and I'll send you.
If we're gonna incorporate PVC into the table. Jeffrey, did you have any comments on? I know I did have some last minute comments come in from DIPRA. I didn't get a chance to review them before this meeting. Jeffrey, you want to touch on those comments that you had sent me?
Sure. Looking through the notes, one of the comments was, there you go. Well, now I gotta put my glasses on. One of the comments was regarding the length of restrained joints. I just want to make sure that if you have a restrained joint length that is, say, 50 feet, you have to restrain 3 joints. So you meet that 50 feet. So you're actually restraining like 60 feet of pipe. So you want to incorporate the pipe in that joint.
Okay.
So if it's 10 feet, 11 feet, you're good. You got that first restrained joint, but you want to incorporate that. So you want to make sure the wording in there is accurate. Also, the restrained joints, doesn't matter which manufacturer you use, you're going to want to pull it tight and extend those joints to its maximum length. That way it restrains those joints from moving. And I didn't see that in the notes anywhere, but you want to make sure you pull those joints taut. That otherwise it can produce a bending moment on another branch you branch off of or something. And the last one I had was, where'd it go?
Is,
If you're deflecting a joint,
okay.
you want to deflect, after you restrain the joints, you want to have a non-restrained joint and then you can deflect. After that, you want an unrestrained, undeflected joint and then you can start deflection. So that's the only restriction that,
And that's across the board. That's just restraints, period.
Yeah.
That doesn't, that's not manufacturer or product specific.
no, that is just straight restrained joint, best practice kind of thing.
Okay.
If
The
the other,
pulling it taut.
that is every manufacturer, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got a microphone?
But doesn't the bell restraint, the field locks that allow deflection, all of them already have
Yeah.
deflection in them, so I mean, that's. No, you have to go without. You can get deflection. You can get deflection with the restraints. With the restraints in them.
That's, yeah, that's what I,
Yeah.
that's what I understood.
Yes.
Right. It's after you're done restraining. You want an unrestrained joint, and then you can start deflecting.
Okay. I'm sorry. Maybe I just didn't understand, but
I'm confused by that statement.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around it myself.
I can get,
Like restrained joint pipe,
yes, you can. Yeah.
and we do all the time, so I
Yeah.
just,
Well, what I don't understand is if you have restraint and you need to deflect, you would need an unrestrained joint before you can start deflecting. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes. Yeah.
What if I'm deflecting a half a mile around a gradual curve? Every one of those joints need to be deflected at maybe, I don't know, 1 degree, and they're restrained. How does the unrestrained joint play into that? To me, it doesn't, I just can't wrap my head around how
Well-
that makes sense.
Well, it's after you're doing your bend, you want an unrestrained, undeflected joint, then you start your next deflection. That's not restrained.
Deflection within the joint.
Yes.
So
But after a bed.
Yeah.
After a fitting,
Oh, after a fitting?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's the key that we were not getting.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Okay. After you're done restraining your fitting and you have that restrained length completed, say you need 20 feet or 30 feet. So you restrain those two joints. You want an unrestrained, your next unrestrained joint, don't deflect. And then if you need to start a bend, you can start a next bend, the next length.
If I'm installing, if I got a wrench and I'm putting a 90.
Yep.
The first one I can't deflect, but then the next one I can.
As long as your restrained joint.
Yeah, all restrained.
Yeah.
No. So is that what the first piece after the bend?
No. After you restrain, okay. Let's see.
like, if you have like a 90,
Uh-huh.
basically you'd have a 90 like this, both pieces coming out of that, no deflection. And then the pieces after that, you can use the deflection.
Well,
after that.
they're saying you can deflect the restrained joints. But once you're done restraining those joints, once you have your length completed, say, we're doing 90s. So you needed a 6-inch pipe, you need 20 feet or 29 feet of restrained joint. So it'd be the first two joints would be restrained. The next one, don't deflect it, but it's unrestrained because you already did your restrained joint for that fitting. So the next one would be unrestrained, and then the next one would be unrestrained, but you can deflect it. Now
I don't know how we'd incorporate something like that into.
That sounds like a spec or like.
Yeah.
Probably need its own detail right there.
Now I can look into the reasoning for that because I was never actually given a reason for that, but I can look into it and get back to you.
But like, isn't all ductile has us, even restrained or not restrained is allowed some sort of deflection. And then now we have field locks. I'm sorry to keep saying field locks, but they're allowed deflection. And now when you're using them, we can't use deflection when I'm sorry.
Yeah, how it all fits in there, it
I
would be
don't know.
very confusing.
Like if we don't use fittings, we don't need to restrain them. But if you use fittings, then don't use deflection and you need to, I'm sorry, I just don't understand. I apologize.
Yeah, no, you and I both. I'm having a hard time with it as well. So what we'll do though, is we can discuss it more at the working group. I think it's worth at least discussing again with a smaller group and see if we can all kind of, put our heads together and understand how we can incorporate, or if it needs to be incorporated into this specification, into this detail.
Yeah. And if the manufacturer is telling you can do it, you can, that's totally their choice. Ours is like a best practice kind of thing.
Okay. So there is a difference there. All right. Perfect. Is anybody else confused? If anyone wants to provide any feedback on this case, I mean, it's really just revising that table and removing the LRN. And then obviously, as I mentioned, we have our list of assumptions and notes, but any other committee members have any comments on this case?
So, Mr. Chairman, Jim Badowich, so Gene, you've got stuff in red and then you got the notes. So is the red, the assumptions you're gonna leave on this?
So the assumptions are all under the notes there. The red is stuff that I need to add. I need to have my drafter put in and really get it into a detail form, clean it up a little bit. But the red's just notes for me that I need to kind of follow up on. I need to verify the PVC calculations before adding PVC down in the bottom right there. I need to add the language for lengths restrained LR for the polyethylene wrapped ductile iron pipe. Instead of just having it say poly wrap, I'll put in all that language. So my drafter's out right now. Once he gets back in, I'll put it into detail form on a detail, and we'll start looking at it as if it was, official, right? Semi-official.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, and I think it's important to put PVC on here because it's, most of the agencies allow both, or they do work with PVC, and I think I mentioned this before, Gene, is that I'd like to see a note just saying that, look, you're not to use thrust blocks with this. I've had different contractors, want to use thrust blocks on this. I said, no, this is for restrained joints. So, I mean, some people just don't understand that, I guess, but it wouldn't hurt to be clear and say, look, this is only for no thrust blocks to be used. This is for restrained joint only. And if you're going to use thrust blocks, maybe reference the 381. That I think we should add that in the notes. So.
Okay, we can. Yeah, I think it's worth some discussion at the working group for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Gene, when we use the PVC application of this in the field, we use the polywrap numbers for the PVC. I don't know where they've came up with it, but that's what we have been using. So
yeah, that's what I'm trying not to exclude PVC since it's in there. It's just I can't really quantify these numbers. I don't have a resource yet, so I'm working on that. I think Warren's going to try to get me a contact.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that comment.
Speaking of the numbers, I wanted the members to know that although the packet just includes the updated details that Jane did, on the specifications cases page and also on this meeting page, you can download the full case that includes copies of all the calculations that he did for each of those. But it's like it would have doubled the size of the packet. So I'll let you look at those on your own.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Gordon. US Pipe took the liberty to put all these through and really evaluate with the assumptions and put the work into it. So it is, all the backup is included there. It's just not in your packet that if you downloaded the packet, you'd have to download the individual case. Thank you, Gordon.
Just one more comment. I think note number 2 is gonna have to be revised to make sure that that additional joint beyond the length of restrainment is also restrained. But I don't know what the best practice is if within the length of restrainment there's an additional bends. I mean, I think in theory, if you're introducing a 90 and there's another 90, you could reduce that amount of restrainment, but is the best practice should it say just instead of saying all joints, should it say all joints, fittings and bends within the length of restrainment plus one should be restrained. That's just probably more safety than anything, but
Well, it's already got an engineering factor of what, 2 figured into it? 1.5?
1.5.
It should be, it's in the notes, the safety factor. I think it was 2 for this, and we matched what was in the existing table.
Yeah.
No. It's 2 for the calculation.
Right.
And we can look at adding that note. I understand your comment.
it's a typical question I used to get, like, if the network out there has a bunch of different fittings that the length of restrainment restart, or there's some interpretation can lead that way, can get very, very conservative.
Well, and the other big part of it is, I mean, installing new is one thing, but installing to existing, like if you're cutting a T in and you're having to chase, you know, so far, and then you find another T, then so far, and then, I mean, where are we going at this point?
No, we didn't. Yeah, that's why we eliminated, the T is now treated as a dead end for that reason.
No, but I know where you're going, and that's where I was asking the question, because in Phoenix, if it's ACP, will require the replacement of ACP with new DIP.
Right.
That's restrained, so.
Well, just that branch would need to be restrained. Technically, you can use, you know, a couple pup pieces and a couple dresser couplings to drop in your T, and then that branch would be restrained per the detail, and it would be, I keep saying this, but be treated as a dead end. It's the same calculation. So therefore, you don't need to restrain your LRN anymore, right? Because LRN goes bye-bye.
I mean, that's this way. I mean, you run into 45, so on and so forth. And also, City of Phoenix still allows external bell restraints on ductile iron. They do when you're so those type of things. So I know that Jim asked about that. Yeah.
Yep. I know I've used them in the past before too. All right. We got comments. We have those. Those will be in the meeting minutes as well. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman.
Maybe that can say it should be supported by sealed engineer calculations. I have never seen anybody actually calculate restraint joints, but.
Mr. Chairman, this is Josh Ford. Comment and then a question. So just a comment on the tables. It looks like we're missing some identifier information in the headings and rows that was there in the old table. For instance, the nominal pipe size, that's in inches, right?
Right.
And the first few columns there are for like the horizontal bends. And most of those angle numbers should probably have maybe like some degrees or.
Yeah, I'll have my drafter. This was just something to get in front of the committee for the mainly for, I guess, the assumptions notes, and then to show pulled out some of the odd pipe sizes. But to your point, once it gets in front of my drafter, he'll basically mimic the current detail, you know, with the degrees and whatnot. We'll just modify it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally fine. Question on the notes and the assumptions. You know, most of the time I feel like most of the time engineers just references detail, and this is what's going to get used. And I'm all for that, you know, I'm all for it being conservative when, you know, development's paying for it or whatever the case is. Now, for some of the city projects, though, there was some discussion earlier about, hey, you know, there really could be more fine-tooth engineering on this to reduce these lengths. And so I guess my question would be, and since we have US Pipe here, where is the bandwidth to change the inputs to do that? I mean, this says that these are based on equations, and in note 9, it says it's based on equations and procedures found in DIPRA, brochure, thrust restraint design, ductile iron pipe. So with the source procedures, is there like a range of safety factors, for instance, that you could go from 1.5 to 3? And we've chosen 2 here, but the bandwidth is you could drop it down to 1.5, or what different approach would an engineer typically take to come up with a less conservative option than what is shown here?
So assumptions may vary, and that would be a case, but it looks like Matt's chomping at the bit to answer that. I appreciate that. Matthew, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, these are definitely conservative values. The engineer of record would look at the specific scenario and look at how they could reduce that. We typically would see, 1.5 safety factor, for example, where this chart has a 2 and it's more conservative. It's something we discussed at the working group. And I think the idea was to leave it conservative and have an engineer make that calculation, the engineer of record, if they wanted to reduce that restrained length.
So the DIPRA procedures or brochure that's referenced there would allow for somebody to use like a 1.5 safety factor, for instance.
So the DIPRA, if you scroll down to the sample calculation, what's shown there is the DIPRA calculator. At the working group, we talked about adding a QR code to this table that would bring you up to that calculator. That was decided to not be included. But this, we can pass along the link to this calculator, and I have it as a note here to give it to Gordon, and maybe you can add it to the attachment, but we'll circulate the link to this calculator.
Yeah, I think it would be good. We'll, for the backup calculations, we'll put that QR code on that first sheet then. It's not part of the, won't be part of the detail, but it'll be something to reference for the backup calculations. You got a comment, Jeffrey?
One thing about the DIPRA calculator is we assume a smooth wall pipe, which everybody knows ductile iron is not a smooth wall pipe. So if your engineer really wanted to save you a foot or 2, they could use that as part of the calculation. And because with the peen pattern, it actually is more slip resistant than what we give it credit for. It's just part of the conservative nature of our calculators.
Even when it's polywrap?
The polywrap does help, but yeah, the peen pattern will still slow it down a little bit.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Chairman, one other comment or question on the detail. The detail calls out for undisturbed soil around the pipe, around all these restrained joints. And I, assume the intent there is you obviously don't want to lose compaction. If the soil was disturbed, it might have lost compaction. I guess just something to consider if you are dealing with disturbed soil, or if this is not undisturbed, is what's the typical requirement there? I mean, that says undisturbed, but if you disturb the soil and I assume it gets compacted to, I don't know, 95% of Proctor or something, it might be even a better case scenario than the undisturbed soil. So just curious how somebody needs to address that for this detail if the soil does get disturbed.
Yeah, so that's taken care of in the assumptions. And I think what we did is we went through trench type from the specifications, and at the working group, we looked at what type of trench was recommended into the calculator.
As one of the assumptions.
So Gene, one last comment from me on that note 4. It says you have an assumption there that the soil is sand and gravel. I mean, most agencies, I shouldn't say that, but I mean, like we require bedding around the pipe, so you always got the basically ABC. But I could see some confusion. The contractors say, well, if I'm going through a clay lens or something, does that change, or does it matter? Because if I put bedding around the entire pipe zone, what governs, the bedding or the native that you're going through?
Well, the soil designation for good sand and gravel, is that outside of the envelope of the pipe?
Well, that's what we should define in note 4.
Outside the trench wall, or is that the ABC bedding type material that we're using. Now, I'm glad you brought that up because I don't want to conflict here.
That's reference to the actual trench, the material in the trench.
The envelope around the pipe. So
Yeah,
if-
but if you got, if you're putting a new pipe, you're gonna have a bedding that, which is basically.
yeah, and if we're
Some agencies don't allow native, so then you're using ABC, which is sand and gravel anyway, so.
right, which if we're referencing a type 4 trench, we're kind of, it's redundant at that point. Is that fair to say or no?
There's different tables in the deep manuals. So that was going to be a comment I had, that make sure that if you're referencing or using a specific modulus of elasticity, the reference is a type that's in the deeper manual that has got a little bit more definition to it. Make sure it links back to that, because it is based on the modulus elasticity often.
It's from a geotech engineer.
Yeah, but it's in the deeper manual. There's the
Correct, yeah,
trench types, then there's the bedding, and there's
Yeah,
the
and
material
it's
types.
called out in the Dipper manual, but it's
Yeah.
also right out of AWWA as well.
Yeah, just so you do need a link back to that material and potentially look to see if there's an equivalent mag material that would be very, very similar to that. That would make it really, really nice. Then you just reference the mag standard for that. That would be equivalent to the deeper discussion.
Okay, no, that's fair. Thanks for clarifying that.
So do we need note 4 then?
What's that, Jim?
And do we need note 4?
I don't know. We can discuss it more at the working group, I think.
Okay.
Let's digest it and we'll discuss it more. All right. Any other comments on the pipe joint restraint detail? Modification? All right. Yeah, it feels like, when it's my children, I seem to spend more time with them. It's my case. I seem to spend more time on it. Sorry about that, guys. It's not the perception I want to show. All right. Let's move into agenda item number 15, which is items proposed to be heard outside right-of-way cases under consideration. 24-C CMP underground storage retention, detention and retention tanks. This is Jose. Jose had some finishing touches he wanted to do. A few comments and some minor changes. Jose, you want to give us an update?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So last time we discussed that we were gonna concentrate this detail for an application of a single barrel installation for CMP. So we got a good note to make sure that we clarified that in the title of the detail. And then we added note number 5, or we modified note 5 to convey that this is really the intent is for a single barrel installation, and kind of provided a conditions that what that means, right? So we're really making it very hard for it to be considered a double barrel application, because it's based on the certain distances of the diameter of the pipe. So you wouldn't be able to install another pipe within practically 2 diameters, or it will be considered a double barrel. But we did kind of say that in those cases, the plans need to provide a detail or more information on how that installation be done. So
Are you guys looking at doing another detail for double barrel or just leave it up to?
So yes, because I think with our contact mentioned, and I'm familiar with this, but most of the installations that he's familiar with are more than 1 barrel.
Yeah.
So he was worried about this detail limiting that application. So that's why we kind of put in that note that, hey, the plans can always provide more guidance on it. But yes, it really comes down to making sure that you are maintaining a balanced backfill approach when you have multiple barrels. So how to convey that information either through a detail or specifications, the part that we got to look into. So
Yeah, I think we're going to put the onus on industry to, on the vendors to try to, once we get this one through, here's the pattern, here's what it looks like. Here you go.
Yeah.
Go create a double barrel one.
Show us a quadruple barrel. Yeah, for multiple or double parallel pipes. All right, this one, you also had some minor changes in the language of 660, correct?
which one?
I
Oh, I'm
think
sorry.
No,
I think that's the same as last time.
That's,
Yeah, no, no.
okay, that's the clean version.
yeah,
Perfect.
the
Yeah.
specification has not changed for quite a few meetings now.
Perfect. All right. Open it up to committee members. This one's up for possible action. I know we discussed putting it up for action before, but now it is up. If any committee members have any questions on the case, on the single barrel, or any comments, please provide them now.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I can't, my eyes are bad, but I can't read the dimension at the top of the pipe in the initial backfill section. Is that just
1 foot.
me? Okay, is it just conflicting with some of the hatch patterns? or-
Yeah, I think that needs to be
Clean
moved
out.
over. Yep,
Yeah,
that
thank
can
you.
be moved over.
Yep, yep.
Your eyes aren't that bad, Ryan. 'Cause-
They're pretty sharp.
That's pretty
And I'm
good.
the one with the glass.
Yeah, that's for both the upper and the lower.
Yes, I saw
detail.
that.
Okay.
It should say 1 foot minimum,
Yes.
except there's another little mark that got in the way of it. And I blew it up big so I could see it, and I even can't see it that way.
Any other feedback, comments, questions from committee members? All right, this case is up for, like I said, action, so I'll entertain a motion from anyone at this
Since it's
point.
my case, I'll not make a motion, but if anybody else,
Okay. You don't feel it's ready to go?
oh no, I feel it's ready to go, yes.
Well, this is your case and you can motion on your own case
I will motion
to approve
to approve, yes, to ask for a vote.
with the note, with
With the
the
cleanup
minor
note, yes.
modification of that note. So I do have one motion for this case to go to vote. Can I get a second motion on this case?
I'll go ahead and second his motion.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, we have two motions. We'll go ahead and go into a vote.
Thank you, Chair. How about we start with the case sponsor, Phoenix?
Yes,
Scottsdale?
This is Roy. Yes.
Surprise? Tempe? Collison? Youngtown?
yes,
Thank you. ADOT?
Yes.
Avondale? Jim, you still there? Buckeye?
Yes.
Chandler?
Yes.
El Mirage? Florence? Gilbert?
Yes.
Glendale?
Wendell's yes.
Goodyear? Maricopa County?
yes,
Mesa?
Yes.
Peoria's not here. Is there anybody who I missed?
Avondale says yes.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? All right, it looks like the motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you, guys. Thank you, Jose, for bringing that case and putting the work into it. All right, we'll move into agenda item number 16, outside of right of way again. This is 24-D, infiltration trenches, a STAD new detail, OROW 524 and section 665 for the outside of right of way. This one's sponsored by Peter. Peter, would you like to give an update on this case?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In our last meeting in April, we received several comments on changes to the detail. They have not been made for this meeting today. I'll have them ready for the next working group meeting next week. those incorporated little clarifications on slopes to make sure what min and max really meant on the side. So those have to be changed in there. There was a request to make sure that it was identified that the infiltration material is not compacted, so that note needs to be added on there. There's also a discussion on incorporating in the detail C, the option C, an inspection port. And I'm not sure we really, I think we were going to go ahead and I was trying to find something that had been done that way to show it. But I'm not sure we really decided if it needed an inspection port or not.
Wasn't the inspection port to see if there was standing water in there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The question was, was it really going to be that necessary? If it's flowing, you'll see it. If it's not, but
It's very reminiscent of the leach field on my septic, right?
Yeah.
You would do the same thing.
yeah, that was meant really, and so what I wanted to do was go pull something out, put it in there, but I'll have that detail so we don't have to spend a lot of time today on it. I'll have that ready next week for the meeting on the 15th with the revisions made and those options shown. We'll talk about it in the committee. I haven't received any other comments, but it was a very spirited discussion. It was really great to get that feedback. And I think once we get that, I'll be able to present this in June with all the cleanup on it.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Any comments from the committee members on this case?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I guess one question for clarification on option B retention basin. It shows existing grade and it shows the 8-inch minimum depth of rock fill cover. See, and I guess there's a spelling error there. Over the geotextile fabric. So it specifies existing grade. Is that typically you're going to be constructing these or frequently in a new basin, and should it be proposed grade and proposed or existing grade?
And that's a good point. Maybe we should be saying bottom of basin grade or something like that.
Right.
Bottom grade. Because then it could be existing or future.
Basin grade? Finished basin grade? Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Yes. We'll incorporate that.
Anybody else from the committee have comments or questions on this detail or on this case as a whole? All right, hearing none, we'll go into agenda item number 17, OROW 25-A, Stormwater Harvesting Basin. This one, Roy from Scottsdale is sponsoring. Roy, you want to give us an update on this case?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we met the last time, I received comments from Jose, City of Phoenix. Thankful for those comments. What Gordon has pulled up on the screen there for you all to see. Jose provided the comments that are shown in red. And then later on, we had our outside right-of-way group, and we discussed a couple of other items, and those are identified on that same slide on your screen in blue. So Jose's comments, which I thought were all very good comments, with regards to the side slope max, instead of just calling it out on the one side, it's probably better to call it out on the side where we actually have a road. So I did add that. He also had a comment with regards to showing the filter fabric that's required in the actual infiltration detail, which was the previous case that we just discussed. And so I added that as well, and that kind of went along with the outside right-of-way group comments to kind of change the basically how it's shown to in the current detail here to match what we've got in the now in the updated outside right-of-way detail 524. So the symbology essentially. And so I've made the symbology change on this as well. And then we discussed the compaction requirements. Peter had kind of alluded to that here just a few minutes ago. we did add a note to the detail. It's note number 6. Basically, subgrade beneath the infiltration trench shall be scarified and raked level by the excavator as necessary to install the geotextile fabric per outside right-of-way section 665. And so we're calling out that note basically at the bottom of the trench. And then that kind of sparked a little bit of update in the specs, because now instead of talking about over compaction, we kind of wanted to shift into just not to talking about not compacting the base, because we're not really wanting the base compacted. And so that's a lot of the stuff you see there in red, where we're basically calling out the infiltration trench raking level, and removing the compaction requirements that were in there previously. Even though we were only calling out like an 85 to 90% compaction, we wanted to just remove that. We really don't want any compaction called out for that bottom area underneath the infiltration trench. And the last sentence kind of specifies why the compaction can affect the overall permeability of the subgrade. So those were the main changes. And then in addition, Jose had one other comment, which I thought is really good and probably something for the committee to consider, is since this detail, this 541 detail actually references that infiltration trench detail, Jose cautioned, and I think it was good, to make sure we don't adopt this detail before we adopt the infiltration detail, which was the case that was just discussed previously.
That is correct. We're cognizant of that on my end anyway.
So those were the major things that were kind of discussed, I believe. So and those were the only comments that I've received thus far, or since our last meeting, let's put it that way.
So raked level, what does raked level mean in the section 641 in the red for 641.3 general? Scarified and loosened to a depth of 6 to 8 inches and raked level by, so you basically, you're leveling it with a loader bucket or with an excavator bucket, but you're not putting downward pressure. Is that what the intent is?
I would say that was kind of the intent. That was a comment that we had from our outside right-of-way group. I think essentially you're wanting it somewhat level so you can put your fabric down on it. But we really don't want any type of compaction. Obviously, you're going to have some with just the weight of the equipment. I don't think you can delicately rake it without any kind of potential compaction just with the weight of the teeth. But we're not wanting to call out any type of specified compaction, because we're wanting the area to be as uncompacted as possible.
So is the concern that if you scarify it with, say, the excavator bucket teeth, and you don't rake it and you lay in your filter fabric and then you drop your rock in there, is a fear that you might damage your filter fabric? Or I guess what I'm getting at is, does it need to be quote unquote raked level? If we're not trying to put any extra compaction effort into it, can we just leave it scarified and lay the filter fabric?
If you have sufficient overlap of the fabric, then there shouldn't be a problem. But I want to go look at some other language to see if there's something. I mean, I'm envisioning they're scarifying with the teeth, reaching out, and raking it, and then usually the operator takes the bucket, turns it, and just kind of smooths it out
a little bit. Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out if there's some way we can specify that. Yeah.
Yeah, let's look at that. Does City of Phoenix have a representative in the outside or right-of-way working group? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Myself and Keith Kesty.
Oh, so that feedback, that when I keep hearing Phoenix had some feedback, that's coming through the working group.
Yes.
Okay. going into funneled into the working group because you're present.
Yeah, we've got
Perfect.
2 folks from the city of Phoenix that sit on it. Oh, actually,
Three,
3.
yes.
3.
Yeah, I started feeling bad. I didn't have any feedback, but I have a representative in that working group. So, all right. All right. Any other questions or comments on this case? All right, we're going to move into agenda item number 18. This is the working group reports. If we can get a brief summary from each of the representatives, we'll start off with the water and sewer working group. Jim, you want to give us an update?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So we met on April 22nd. It was just it was hybrid, and it was just me and Adrian from I forget the company now. Nina Foundry. So so we didn't have very good attendance, but online was still, it wasn't a lot of people there. I know you were out too. So, but anyways, we again discussed a little bit on the CIPC case, and thanks Warren for clarifying that on the visiting the ADOT spec on that. So I think that's pretty ready to go, don't you think, Warren?
Agreed, Jim, as mentioned, and then a broader look at the overhauling the case.
So yeah, so hopefully we can wrap it up at our working group meeting. Then again, a little discussion on the miscellaneous corrections, and we had didn't have much on the box culverts. Adriana wasn't there, but we had a little bit of discussion, Warren, on your end. So you still think that'll be ready to go this year?
Potentially, I think that if we actually have some time to get together and address all the comments and get a good draft put together, I would like to see that.
That sounds good. Then we had a short discussion on the case 25-3, the PEX-A pipe. So again, just to remind people that I think there's 2 or 3 agencies that currently are using it. So then we again had a little discussion, Gene. I know you weren't there on your case for detail 303-3. I think we talked that to death today, but we'll skip on that. So hopefully we can get a lot accomplished and get close to wrapping it up at the next meeting, Gene. Short discussion on the Hobos, not much there. Arvid wasn't there. Adrian was there from Nina, and she had presented some details on their case. Arvid's presenting on the cast iron revisions to details 423, 424. And again, we had some good discussions on their case, comments on the details. Again, they're just wanting to make some clarifications and changes to the frame and not the cover, to make it lighter and supposedly stronger. So you'll see that come forward. And then that was about it.
Well, that's quite a bit.
So, and then I just a side note, thanks Jose, we got in touch with the City of Phoenix sewer inspection team, and so it's going to help Rob out and hopefully developing these sewer video testing and mandrel specs. So mainly on the video, because City of Phoenix does their video and exclusive. So hopefully we'll get some good notes and specs from them and work on that. I don't know if that's going to be ready to go this year. We still got a lot of bit of work, but it's moving forward anyways. And so again, thanks to City of Phoenix for that. And that's about it. We're going to meet this month on May 20th, and it's going to be online only. So.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Outside of right-of-way working group, Peter, you want to give us a brief summary on?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We went through the cases that we talked about already, so I won't go into that. We've gone into the detail that was talked about during the meeting of the 3 specific cases. Excuse me, cases. Upcoming cases, though, we are working on, which would be I'm not going to call it miscellaneous corrections, but the modifications to the existing MAG details that accommodate the spillway detail that was passed last year. The formal case has been presented within the working group, waiting for comments on that. I would expect in June, we probably will be bringing that one forward and showing it to this group and moving that one out. So that one is moving forward. The decomposed granite and soil stabilizers, that we did have a discussion on use of the potential soil lock product, which would be used for equestrian trails. And apparently that's been used. We're going to start working on that one to try to put it into maybe a specification format as opposed to a detail format. I need to look at also some details that have been provided on those. So that one's coming up. We may need to do a revision also to the dust palliative, mag dust palliative spec to allow both those materials. We'll have to take a look at that. That one's in development. We've asked the industry representative to take a look at that also. Wayne Colbank did a great job identifying several areas that we could potentially be expanding to the outside right of way. We've got now the list to work on, and I think we're at the process now of we're going to create a survey internally within the working group to kind of get a feel for what's the biggest bang for the buck. Where do we think the best options are going to be to going after some of these specific issues? We've got now kind of a nice long dozen item laundry list.
It's a great
that we're
idea.
looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great that he put that together. So we're kind of at the bottom, at the process of going through and saying, where do we think the best options are going to be and what do we want to start working on? Obviously, I don't think those would be coming in this year. We'd be able to start working on them though and have them ready for the first of the year, similar to what we were trying to do this year. I think we talked about the rest of those. We had the updates on the specs. Our next meeting is scheduled for next week on Thursday, the 15th. We've moved it. It's all online. It's a virtual meeting and it'll be at 10:30 in the morning.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Asphalt materials, concrete working group. Greg's not here. Are you going to cover for Greg, Rob?
So obviously we were working on the ATTI updates for MAG. So hopefully next week in our working group, we can have that wrapped up and get the final comments and get that out for a vote. And then we're also working on section 326 and 719 updates to bring in EVAC mixes into MAG. So hopefully we'll have that ready after next week to present for a case number. But looking to bring polymer modified mixes similar to EVAC, bring that language into 326 and 719 for use throughout the cities, for all the cities. So those are pretty much what we're working on now.
It's a lot. Just that alone is a lot.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll have it ready for the group by June for comments to this group, but we've been working on it the last couple months and hopefully can get some more comments back next Thursday to get it out.
So your next meeting is going to be
the 15th as well, Thursday the 15th. Yes.
All right, thank you. And we have the ADA working group. Warren or Jose, you want to give an update on your working group?
Sure, I'll kick it off. We've already talked about Jose's current case and then the newly added case for the revision to section 340. Again, a well-attended meeting. And we spent most of the time looking at the proposed revisions to the single ramp for the curb ramp details. At this point, it's just depicted on the 237 detail itself, but with the intent to add to the radial ramps as well. Looking at that language for how to portray that area that we've all seen before for that DG or non-traversable area where pedestrian crossings are not intended or not required in that direction. Adding another detail to that series for the curb ramp option as well. And then also had some discussion on the directional ramp itself and some of the challenges with construction. And when you have that 5-foot offset allowance, may not be the best for pedestrians traversing. So looking at have drafted in a 2-foot max, but with the caveat that it could be 5 foot with agency approval. But So still working through some of that on that. Like to get that out as a case at some point. And then we got into, we have a standing item on here to kind of keep an eye on where PROAG adoption is at the federal level, the DOT and FHWA levels. And from what I had spoke with ADOT, and ADOT, sounds like ADOT would like to take part in this as well. So we need to forward the invite to their compliance team for the May 15th meeting, or the June, whenever we get. It sounds like there is some ADA training coming up this month. I forget the actual location, but the FHWA may have some updates on where things are. So we'll keep an eye on that. One of the other things that came up was the bus bay detail 252. Whether we need that in MAG, or should we update the MAG detail, which agencies use the MAG detail or have their own. The thought was to maybe get everyone's input and circulate internally to see what the perspective is from the agencies, if we actually need to make an update to that detail or just remove it. So that's one request I have for everyone. We talked about oh yeah, so then we got into Mesa was in attendance, very good discussion there, brought up a good point on a lot of these details where there are signalized intersections. We get into the PED post and the ramp curb and some of those constructability challenges. And Mesa has a good detail that was shared. So that's definitely an area I think we need to kind of get into, and adding to our curb ramp details some note, so it's known that if you're here, you're going to have or a traffic signal having another detail to reference. So again, good discussion. What else? As Jose said, we're hoping to get some traction, getting some support from drafting effort to work on the blended transition detail. And what else, Jose? Did I miss anything else?
No, I think you cover everything.
Is the PED push button, is that in the MUTCD, or is that?
That's where you have PROAG and MUTCD.
Yeah,
to look at.
that's what I recall. That's always a point of contention. So, all right. Is that it, Warren?
Yeah, that's
Good
it. Thank
stuff.
you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move into agenda item number 19, potential cases for 2025. So I have a note here that update the dimensions on detail 220-1 and 220-2. This is something that was brought to my attention by a designer asking the question, what is that dimension where the red circle is? So after running it, looking at it myself, I determined it should be 1 inch based on, the bottom measurement there. I'm thinking this is a miscellaneous correction, but I wanted to get kind of a feel from the committee. If you look at type C, you can see 1/2 inch, and then the one above it mentions 1/2 inch, but for some reason type A is missing that. Now like I said, I suspected it was 1 inch. I ran it through my city engineer and our principal engineer. Both of them agreed that if those two lines are on the same plane, that should technically be 1 inch up there. So I think we just need to give some clarification on that. And then the next one down, -2, same thing. We're missing it under type E. Well, yeah, we're not missing it under F. F is noted as 1 inch, but we're missing it under type E. So does anybody have any real experience in this area? I want to tell you right off the bat, the bottom of that grade where that curb sits is not battered like that. If they slip it, they use their trimmer, it's level, and then their shoe brings in the concrete at the angle that they need for the broom finish, the shiner, and the back of curb. I'm almost thinking we do away with with that, but if we do that, we'll have to make it a case. If we do away with the 1 inch below the actual curb, how it cants up like that, it brings the lip of curb, it brings the whole curb up. It's kind of odd. But any feedback on that? Anybody have any comment on that?
I'd just be interested if Brian's still there with the contracting community on those shoes. What does actually shape them to?
Yeah, is Brian Gallimore, are you still on? I'll circle back with Brian and see if he can run that through his contractor group and see, what we're doing out there, because it should be applicable, right?
What are the fab shops that do the shoes? What template are they using for? What are they using?
Yeah, well, it's gonna have, is it 1 inch? The other thing, so right now this is a potential case. I'm not necessarily sure if I want to stick it in miscellaneous corrections and add that 1 inch yet, or if we need to revamp, if we need to make it a case and kind of modify this a little bit. Jim, you have a lot of experience in this committee. Do you have any comments on that?
Could you repeat I'm sorry, Gene, could you repeat the question?
Whether I should send this through as a miscellaneous correction or potentially bring it through as a new case to get the clarification with the 1 inch.
I don't know, either or.
If we just add 1 inch where that circle's at, it's a miscellaneous correction. But if we start,
Otherwise, you open a case, it's just gonna get legs again, so.
Ryan,
I would agree. If you're just adding the 1 inch, I mean, basically it's just missing the dimensioning. You have everything else right there. It's just the numbers missing. That's miscellaneous. If you end up leveling that bottom, that's all.
right. Ryan, do you kind of have the same, you have a lot of experience in this committee as well. That's why I'm trying to pick your brain on it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the comments that have already been made.
Okay. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just know
No,
you have
it's-
a lot of experience.
It's fine. I'm not the guy watching it get built all the time like many of you are, but I don't know how they form the curb to angle it like that unless you have the subgrade that way, and I've never seen the subgrade that way.
No, usually they drag their Gannon bucket cut grade or they cut it with a trimmer, right? Hey, we have an inspector right here. I mean,
We
what do you
do.
see it out there?
He was whispering that to me. I'm just repeating what he told me.
Okay, good.
I didn't want to speak out of line, but it's never at that slope, and unless it's an engineered specific, have that slope on the bottom of the foot, it's not even there.
It doesn't serve a purpose either, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to try to save some concrete.
Right. And to have the inch measurement on the top grade, just setting a grade slope would be better off than saying the distance between here and here should be a 1 inch drop. Just say it's a slope.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know how you're gonna measure that in the field.
Yeah, that was one of my difficulties is looking at the extension lines. It's hard to tell where they're going, to the end of the curb or to the flow line or to the 1 foot mark or.
That's what the same comment I gave Jim during previous conversation. I think it's intended to go all the way to the back of the curb, but we should really be specifying what's the elevation difference between the flow line and the lip of cut. That's because that's really what controls the whole
Right.
thing.
And they have the 1/4 inch in there for the asphalt thickness, right? To be up and over, but you're right. That's the dimension. But it's on some of the other details. That's what was mind boggling is 220-1. It's called out, but it's missing in some of the other, well, it's called out on type F there. Yeah. So I think maybe we,
See how at the bottom is called out 1.25 inches?
yes,
'Cause I
that is
think it's
the,
intended to go to the back of the curb.
that is the only discrepancy that I found was on that detail. Why it's 1.25 inches, I have no idea, but really it's a useless measurement because it's not built like that in the field.
And this is Warren. If you look at that note number 5, I mean, maybe that was the original intent, the cutting of the road and matching the road, the pavement cross slope, maybe. I don't like, I'm kind of like Ryan in that. I'm not watching it to see how it's being built, but
But even then you're pouring concrete before you actually grade out the roadway. So the roadway grade isn't even set when you're pouring out these.
It's roughed in and that's it. Yep. All right, I'm gonna run it.
Chairman, this is Josh Ford. Just to clarify, when you say putting an inch there, we're talking about you have your edge of asphalt, which drops a quarter of an inch to the gutter pan, which you're then saying would then slope an additional inch to flow line. So then your total difference, vertical difference from flow line to EP would be 1.25 inches.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because you need to be a 1/4 inch above lip of gutter with your asphalt, plus the additional inch.
Mr. Chair, I think, are we in the future agenda items section of the,
Not yet, but we
Oh,
could
what-
be.
future cases?
Yeah, this is potential cases.
Oh, potential cases. Okay. Maybe this can be carried on to a working group meeting or a future meeting agenda item.
Yeah, I was trying to get a feel for the committee on whether we should make this miscellaneous correction or make it a case. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
And say, this is Roy, City of Scottsdale, real quick. Usually like in the design plans and stuff, you see typically where on the curb and gutter profiles, they typically call out top of curb and the flow line or whatever with usually like a 6-inch difference. So your flow line is 6 inches below your top of curb, assuming your normal height.
Yeah, I'll run it through Brian before I do anything, and I'll decide whether I want to move it into miscellaneous corrections then or run it as a case. All right, more potential cases. Update the grade adjustment rings, detail 422-1. What I'm finding is what's in MAG isn't consistent with the submittals that are coming in. So that's a potential case coming. I think this is posted on online, Gordon, is that?
Yeah, it's posted separately on the meeting page.
And then we have the one that Arvid's working with Nina on, which is the frame and cover, taking some weight out of the frame. So that's also another potential case. Do we have any other potential cases coming this year? All right. Agenda item number 20 is the staff report. Gordon, do you have a report you want to provide?
Nothing important.
All right, agenda item number 21 is general discussion. I'm going to open it up for general discussion related to specifications, construction practices, and technologies. Does anybody have anything they want to share with the committee? Agenda item number 22 is request for future agenda items. Ryan, would you like to request a future agenda item? Okay. Any requests from the members for future agenda items?
This is Josh Ford. Something that came up recently that I was looking into that might be good to get some more clarity on from MAG is fiber addition in concrete. So if you have, be it bus bays or concrete turn lanes, etc., and you wish to use fiber reinforcement, in terms of like fiber strands, I'd be curious what others are using and whether there should be any additional kind of clarity from MAG. MAG section 725 talks about fibers that are incorporated in the approved concrete mix shall meet the requirements of ASTM C 1116. But when you go look at that ASTM, I mean, there's multiple fiber strand options you can use: steel, fiberglass,
Monofilament. Yeah, there's all different types of.
etc. So, you know, I know Buckeye, we're looking, trying to figure out, well, what's really an appropriate fiber strand specification for concrete reinforcement in drivable areas in the right of way.
So we used Glendale when we did Glendale Avenue from 99th to El Mirage. That's all PCCP concrete fiber reinforced. We used a design engineer to come up with a specific mix design for that, incorporating the fiber for that strength. But I don't know if MAG wants to have an actual publication for our specification for fiber in lieu of reinforcement. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, part discussion topic, part, maybe request to look at something under 725, because we just simply point to an ASTM, but there's really no specs or details about what really is appropriate for concrete pavement or concrete drivable right-of-way areas.
So maybe that would have been either open general discussion or potential cases. It sounds like more general discussion, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know how which way I would lean on that, Josh.
Chair,
Probably more toward a design engineer to come up with. Yes.
Chair, I just want to mention that the fiber and concrete was an item of discussion at the asphalt concrete working groups in the past. So that'd be a place to discuss it.
There would be a place to start right there with the working group, Josh.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it was brought up by Jeff Hearn and talked about, and I think the city of Phoenix obviously removed a lot of reinforcement in their light rail. So it's almost one of those details you need to engineer it for each application to know how much reinforcement to remove. So it depends. You almost have to get with the concrete engineer to discuss that and figure out what the replacement is, because there's not really a standard. You can do this instead of this. You got to design it for that application. So that's kind of the discussions that happened in the MAG asphalt and concrete working group.
Thank you. Does that help you out, Josh?
That's good input. Thank you. Apologies if I should have brought it up under a prior section of the agenda.
It's okay. We're almost to the end. Everybody will be happy here in just about 2 minutes. Any other requests for future agenda items besides less agenda items?
Chair, since Greg Kronberg isn't here today, I know in the past he has asked about having the ASU Southwest Asphalt Consortium, I believe, give a update presentation next month. So we talked about adding that to the agenda for June since we had the US Pipe this month.
Yeah, he did. So that would be a presentation at the beginning of the meeting. Thank you, Gordon. All right. Agenda item number 23, comments from the committee. Are there any comments or announcements? I'd like to make a quick one. I appreciate ARPA reaching out and putting together the on-site at Vulcan Materials for their processes that they're doing out there. I've never seen so many crushers in a row. I mean, I've been around crushing and screening for the first 4 years of my career. That's what I did. But I've never seen more than 2 crushers at one time. So I really appreciate ARPA reaching out to all the municipalities. Huge turnout. I saw Phoenix there, Gilbert, seen a lot of people there. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, we try and do twice a year, do tours, but if any city wants a tour of a plant, we can do it at any time.
We had all 3 processes going also.
Yeah, they had concrete, aggregate production, and asphalt. So yeah, we'll typically hit a plant or 2 plants. You probably went over to Vulcan and they have everything going on there. So it's great when we can hit one location. But yeah, if anyone in this room or on the committee would like a tour, we can set up.
So that was brought to us
Single tours.
by the ARPA Education Coalition. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Any other announcements from committee members? All right. So our next meeting for the Standard Specification Detail Committee will be held on Wednesday, June 4th, 2025 at 1:30 with no more business today. No further business. This meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everyone.